so in love with you. Whatever you want to do is alright with me. You make me feel so brand new, and I wanna spend my whole life with you. Let me say it, sis.
Say it. Say it.
Hallelujah.
Wow.
Bless all this evening. God is good, isn't he?
Amen.
It's good to have a good laugh sometimes. But I meant that from my heart. That's my girlfriend right there.
Yes. Well, on Sunday, you heard us tell our story. Probably got very real for some of you, but also it was meant to be that way because the pathway to a healthy marriage is not always easy, but it can be made easy. It's about what you put into it, who you have in it, and who we have in it is what we talked about God's purposes for marriage, because God made marriage to bless us. All right. I said that our spouse is not our enemy. So when you have disagreements and disputes and just downright arguments sometimes, remember that the way you go about your communication, the way you go about speaking to your spouse should not be like you would be speaking to an enemy, because this is about who you accepted in love. And we didn't get a chance to, set a couple of things, but one of the things I tell people all the time is the relationships that you have with others and the way you treat somebody that you respect, you have mutual respect, that sets a foundation for how you enter into a marriage relationship, because all of the things will play out. We both are two different human beings, and we both come with backgrounds. And you heard about my husband and I having different backgrounds where his family did little talking, my family did a lot of talking. He neglected to say that when there was an issue, my mother would wake us up on Saturday mornings and we had a round table and we all had to come down there and we all had to talk it out. So imagine me coming into my marriage in that same kind of way, and I have a husband who doesn't talk. So the first thing I'm thinking is, he doesn't love me. He's not being responsive to me, and he's not, I have to have eye engagement, and he knows that I always say that all the time, you're not looking at me. And if we make quick snap decisions on the way we came into our marriage based on the way we were raised, that starts a rocky foundation because you're not even giving room for what you need to grow. So, one of the things that we wanted to kind of start to talk about was our communication, and that we know that communication, a healthy marriage, is based on the style of communication we have. Um, there is a quote by Winston Churchill that says, if we open up a quarrel between the past and present, we shall find that we have lost the future. I want to repeat that. If we open up a quarrel between the past and present, we shall find that we have lost the future. Okay? That's pretty deep. And you think about some of the things that you've brought up in relationships, in your marriage, and think about where a lot of those tenets were things that were in the past, and you're bringing it into your present, and it starts to mark how your future is going to look. That's not the basis of a healthy marriage.
It's amazing. When you're dating, you have so much to say. When you're seeing each other, you talk half the night to 2, 3, 4 in the morning. So, oh, We only got 2 hours of sleep to get. I'll talk to you later. And I don't know. I guess you're very verbal then. When we got into this marriage, it's like, still had a lot to say, but I wasn't saying what she wanted me to say. So I began to find out that a marriage is really built on communications. It's like our communication with God. You have no communication with God, you can't have a relationship. It was very difficult. So as we grew in our marriage, I began to grow in my communication skills with her. Of course, and it changed things around. So communication is the bedrock. If you're having difficulty talking, it kind of shows her that you might be rejecting her, or like she said, she didn't feel like she was loved because I couldn't express it because I didn't know how to express it. So understanding the effects of non-communication, it has a sledgehammer effect on your spouse. So I want to read this little skit that I did. I heard, and it like touched me so much. And
Well, we got to set it up, though.
We gotta set it up first.
We got to turn the chairs.
now, this is a situation between a husband and wife, and they were having problems in their relationship. So it reads like this. A married couple was in the middle of an ongoing disagreement. The disagreement had come to a standstill. They weren't even talking anymore. They shared only hard stares, gestures, and they were just avoiding each other. Weeks had passed by and still no verbal communications. Well, the husband had an important meeting scheduled that he had to attend the next day. So being a heavy sleeper, he thought, I'll leave my wife a note to wake me up at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. She's always up early anyway. So he wrote the note, put it on her pillow, and it read like this: honey, please wake me up at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Well, tomorrow morning comes. He woke up and saw the clock indicated 7 a.m. He thought to himself, this must be bad. She couldn't even wake me up. In anger, he jumped out of the bed only to see on his pillow a note saying, honey, get up. It's 6 o'clock. So you can see how communications in a marriage can really affect you.
Mixed messages.
Mixed messages.
The video we showed on Sunday talked about mixed messages. There are times in your marriage where, we love one another, but make sure you like one another, because love, although it covers a multitude of sins, and it certainly can carry you. There are times when sometimes love takes a back seat because you get busy, you're doing a whole lot of things, and then in walks financial troubles. Somebody loses a job, someone gets sick, and all of a sudden, love is like kind of not quite at that front door. And we've certainly, in 33 plus years, have had a lot of different, valleys and plateaus of things that have happened, deaths. But here's the thing, because I have a friend in him, you know what? Even if he wasn't telling me, I love you, I felt loved. And that's the basis of what we're trying to explain to you on this evening, is that when you don't always have to hear love to feel love, because I know he's got my back. He was doing things. There was a When my mom died, I fell into a deep depression. Didn't even know, and it really is that sneaky kind of thing where you don't feel it, see it, taste it. I call it perfunctioning. I was performing and functioning at work, coming home and going straight to bed, the whole 9 yards. And I just got into a depression. My kids were like, I just didn't smile. I thought it was not even appropriate to smile because I was grieving. And my husband, I had shut down. I didn't even want to go to church. And one day my husband said, "That's it." And it turned out that we knew from the church that we were attending that the founder of this church was doing a church plant, him and his wife, but we hadn't been in touch with them because of the passing of my mom. And it had been maybe a couple of months that they had already planted their church. And so my husband, this is the friendship. This is the friend in him. He told me, "We're going to go find the Hertz Church." But that was the statement. Here was the act. He picked out my outfit, literally, and see, we were coming to church that you did stockings and everything. So literally, he put my legs in my stockings. I wore a suit. He coordinated it, made sure I had my jewelry, and we got in the car and we drove to, at that time, the Holiday Inn here in Brockton. And it was definitely the turning of my relationship with everything. My grief started to come out, but I fell in love with my husband again because he made it happen when I couldn't. And that's what your spouse, a healthy relationship is about. When you can't do it, they'll do it. They'll take on the extra weight and then not keep an account of it later on down the road if it happens again. And you're like, wow, because you know what? It's constantly swinging back and forth, constantly swinging back and forth. The communication we have, we don't hurt each other. Out in the hallway, I was repeating what I said on Sunday. Our marriage is about fighting for it and not in it. Okay? So the relationships, for those of you who are dating, for those of you who have prospects of it, you know what? Really test to see if you have someone who you value, who you have mutual respect. Because, love is something of the affair of the heart, but you also need to know that you can trust them, that they're your go-to. I mean, no matter what, Bruce is my go-to. No matter what. He over the years has learned me even when I can't speak.
Fight for your marriage and not in it. There was an incident in our marriage, so I can lift you up. Being the man of the house is a lot of responsibility. And sometimes when we can't execute what we're supposed to be doing, it's a terribly hurting thing to a man when he's supposed to be a man and he can't be the man that he aspires to be. We got into some financial difficulties, and sometimes your expenses exceed your income. And trying to juggle and stuff, we got in a little trouble, and our house was in trouble. But God helped us out. He made a way, but it was just my wife. I was so hurt. And even though the background we had with our parents and longevity, I made this unthought of statement because I thought she was so mad with me. I said, "Well, do you want me to go or leave?" She looked at me. She said, "I didn't get into this marriage to leave." And we've never been violent in our life. But this one time, she was violent with me.
I popped him in his chest.
I didn't expect it. She hit me in my solar plex. Boom! Knocked the wind out of me. And I was like, what? And she said, we're going to work this out. She said, how could you say, do you want me to leave? You know, but that's just the way I felt. Because I wasn't standing up to my responsibility in the marriage at the time. And the thing about it, what caused it, it was communication. Mm-hmm. I was too afraid to tell her what was going on, that we couldn't meet the demands that we had set in front of us. You know, you're paying Peter, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. Mm-hmm. And things just happened, you know, and you wound up being a month behind, and I think she got a notice and said, you're like a month to 2 months behind, like, where's our payment? And she said, like, what's going on? And it's like, I found out that this happens in a lot of marriages. Yeah. And sometimes some people don't make it back, they actually break up. But thank God I had a loving, strong wife that supported me still and said, we're going to get out of this, we're going to work together, we're going to communicate, and we're going to work the problem out. And we're going to continually trust in God. And God did work it out. There's one of the situations in my life that I was on the bad end. I felt so, I don't know. If you ever felt bad in your life, I felt like I was lower than the floor. You know, and she's trying to prop me up and lift me up and encourage me. Say, we can get through this. You know, but you're accepting what she's saying, you're feeling what she's saying, but it still doesn't change the way you feel. You know, I mean, I was like hurt, and it's like, how do we go fix this up?
But here's the thing, you guys, you know, for the community of faith, and you're hearing this now, and then you may go back and reflect on your own relationships, your marital relationships. But we couldn't have done this without God. Amen. And I'm just going to tell you plain and simple, because you have to fight flesh in your marriage. And you have to fight it on so many levels. The first is when you first get married, just juggling how you're going to live with one another, because you're two individuals that came in with two different, you know, sets of baggage. So first you got to give each other room enough to unpack that baggage and not make an accusation to one another. Then the next flesh that you got to fight is, oh, shoot, what did I do? And when you feel like you need room, you can't just walk out. That's why any of you guys who are living together, show your commitment. If you really love the person that you're living with, make a commitment to marry that person, because right now, living together, you could just pick up and walk away. There is no, I mean, this is not even, you know, a covenant. You just get to pick up and walk away. And what does that say? And, you know, one of the things that my husband and I always talk to are couples who have lived together for a long time, and they're like, well, you know, but we got this down. No, you don't have it down. You do not have it down. And when you do decide that you will get married, then God elevates that relationship. But again, fighting flesh all the time. So then you start to have that itchy, like, I feel like I need some room, and you can't walk away. So you got to fight flesh again. All right? Then there's those times like, you know, my husband talked about when I got pregnant and we couldn't come together in an intimate way for months and months. And he was already told by our spiritual godmother that that was going to happen. So are you going to catch an attitude about that, you know, to the person that you love? Instead, what did he do? He when he saw I had my cravings, he was getting up and going to Brookline from Roxbury to find a particular sandwich, you know. But again, fighting flesh. Because, you know, he wasn't saying, well, gee, I've been doing all this stuff. When am I going to get mine? He did later, much later. But it really is about fighting flesh and making room for the Holy Spirit in your marriage, because the Holy Spirit is going to bite your tongue when you want to say maybe what you shouldn't be saying, because it is so easy to come real fast out of flesh with your mouth. But let God run that argument. And I mean, I can tell you, outside of that one time, and only because I had to fight for my marriage when he said, do you want me to leave? So I thought it was worth that thump to keep him. But outside of that, in our 33 years, yeah, we've had disagreements, and I know, and let me tell you, when you start living with somebody and you start having that longevity, you know those buttons to push. But never pushed him out, and he never pushed me out, and we never invited anybody into our marriage. See? But God was always there.
During that time when I was forced to do what I had to do, what got me through is that I truly believe the word that God wouldn't put anything on you too hard that he couldn't take you through. And men are built differently. We have a drive that's almost insatiable, but I prayed. I said, Lord, now, how do I bridle my feelings? How do I deal with my wife? Seeing that she's saddened because she can't compliment me because she's sick. And so I spent my whole time building her up, telling her she's beautiful. Regardless, that's all right, honey. Loving her in different ways. Learning different intimacies, just hugging each other and talking and, you know, cuddling, things like that to make her spirits grow up, because she was deathly ill. I mean, sick, ill. And she's carrying our child. Now, you know the story that my spiritual mother told me, what God had said. And it wasn't something like, it was exactly what she told me, to the letter, both times. So you guys know there's a spot in our marriage for a good 20, 21, 22 months that we weren't together. And believe me, it was hard, but I loved her so much that I endured it, and I couldn't wait till it like ended. Would you feel like that? Man, I said, honey, is it time yet? At least can we put it on the agenda to start thinking about it? You know, how you feeling? What did the doctor say? You know, it's like a ball player, like coming off an injury. Are you totally rehabbed? You know, are you ready to play? But this is how I felt, but this is the reality of the whole thing. This is your spouse. God said that he took her from us, men. We got married, we are one. So when she feels bad, I feel bad. When she feels good, I feel good. I think when I felt rejected, she felt rejected because I felt rejected. So it was a thing that went back and forth, but only love prevailed. And before I give her the mic back, I got to tell you this short story about my brother was being elevated, so we getting dressed, going to the celebration. And my wife, you call this dark ring around your neck when you're pregnant. Well, her ring was jet black. And all of the negative stuff that women talk about that happen to them when they're pregnant, like your nose get extremely wide and stuff like that. You know, but I didn't see all of that. I saw my beautiful wife. So we get to this celebration, and my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, she's got like 9 children. She should know better. She's talking about, hi, girl. She said, my gracious, look at your nose. It's all over your face. And 3 hours of me telling her how beautiful she was destroyed in 10 seconds. The evening was lost. I was like, honey, you are gorgeous. And she said, no. She told me my nose was all over my face. But this is the stuff that you have to do when you're married and lift each other up to let them know that you're loved.
One of the other things that happens in marriage is our level of communication can create isolation too. There are 2 types. One where you are not talking, and it's actually creating isolation because it's a selfishness that you may have. You want it your way, so it's like my way or no way, and that's it, and you just don't talk. Or one where you talk and you make the person feel isolated. It is the worst thing to be in the physical presence of your spouse and feel like you're in a lonely marriage. It is absolutely, and we've, one of the things is when we've had opportunity to speak with couples in our home, and people say, oh, how do you bring? I say, our home is covered, so I don't worry about that. And we want people to relax and really share what's going on in their relationships. And when we hear about selfish acts, well, this person didn't do it, so I'm not going to do that. I mean, somebody has to take the high road. And if you take the high road, you know what? It leads to an opening for having conversation. But if you're both going to be bullheaded and not move and be kind of like going back and forth, there is no resolve. There really becomes no resolve in it. And especially the way you act as a couple in front of your children, it's not what you say, but it's what you do. And if they're not seeing you come to resolve in the way you handle the situations that are thrown in your marriage, that's leaving a legacy. And that's something we wanted to talk about, leaving a legacy.
Well, in our marriage, our children have seen us have great disagreements. They've seen us come to the table to talk it over. They've seen us resolve what we were talking about. They've seen us make up. So they know about delegation and dealing with situations and talking and coming to a conclusion. And sometimes you have to agree to disagree, but they see us coming to an agreement, and we're so loving that they go around and say, come on, Mom and Dad. It's first person never, because they're adults. Like I said, you guys are adults. I said, we married. I said, we can do anything we want to do. Because we run around pinching one another, but that's just how we feel about one another. And that's not all the time, but it's great to do what you were doing when you were dating. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned, that we constantly do things that I do things to make her happy and surprise her, bring some flowers home every once in a while. And I just do it just because of. She said, what are these for? I said, that's because I felt like you needed flowers today. But stuff like that shows that you love and you appreciate. You do everything you need to do to consistently and constantly build her up. And it's called putting money in the bank. It's like that debit card. If you don't have no money in the bank, of course you can't draw nothing out.
Right.
So like when I talked about last week, sometimes, hey, honey, I understand how, you're working hard, you don't feel like it and stuff, but at some point, as the athlete said, you got to give one up for the giver. And and she's always agreeable when that happens. And she's like, oh, okay, you're right. I've been distant lately, but this is the compromise you guys come to in a marriage, and it's loving, and we can laugh about it. That I know when their attitudes change. I said, oh, okay, it's time for ovulation. I said, okay, let me go get some chocolates. And, I go get some chocolates. She said, how you know I wanted chocolates? I said, because I can tell from the different, not your attitude, but the way you talk to me. When this is happening, you become a little bit more direct and a little bit less loving. And she said, really? I said, yeah, over the years, I can tell, so I know exactly what's going on. She said, how you know? I said, don't you think I know you now, by now?
And that's key. I mean, you know what? A healthy relationship, especially in marriage, is really learning that person, everything about that person. I mean, you can know it before they say it. You know what I'm saying? And if you're open to that, God can just pour more into the marriage because of that, just because you're receptive to one another. You have to be able to, now, listen, we're making this sound all nice and dicey. There has been some days, some days where, you know what? I just had to bite my tongue. That's a healthy relationship right there, when you know how to bite your tongue, hold back. Sometimes just maybe you don't have to have that conversation right then and there. How about you don't have to have that conversation when they're trying to watch the Super Bowl? Timing is everything. Timing is certainly everything. Or when they're about to go to sleep, and then you want to have this conversation. And I can remember there's been a couple of handful, because I'm the talker, that he's like, can we talk about this a little later? As long as you make a little later become a reality. See, here's the thing. You can't just say a little later and then never let it happen. It's got to happen, because things that are unsaid start to manifest. And you give the devil a foothold into your marriage. And then on top of that, here's the flesh coming. I'm going to go talk to somebody else about what's going on outside of my marriage. And I know some of you have heard this. You deposit what's going on outside your marriage, then you and your spouse make up, get it over with. But what you deposited is still outside, because you don't make up with those folks that you leave that message with. You made up with your spouse, but meanwhile, whoever it is, whether it's your family or your girl or your boy, they got it in their head. And one, they could perpetuate the conversation with you, or two, perpetuate it with others. And then you got problems. And a lot of times, that's where those problems will end up right back, because then you start saying, you told so-and-so, you what? And you all moved away from it, but now you got to move back to it. It really does come back at you. And so I would tell you, in terms of thinking about where you are in the relationships that you have, do a checkup on yourself first. See how you act on certain things. Do you give room for your spouse or the significant person to be able to speak? Are you able to monitor the type of communication that you have? Have you given yourself the level of selflessness? Meaning that you will give to them and not have to always expect you get something back. Because let me tell you, God honors marriages, and he will make it known to your spouse when you're doing good works. But be truthful about the relationships that you have with one another. So I think we want to probably open it up for questions.
You got 47 seconds. I just want to say this one.
See,
One thing.
him, that's his.
No, I just wanted to say that the relationship that you have, and when you keep everything between your wife and you, is a wonderful thing. I know a couple of times my wife, she actually told me that she had discussed something with her mom, and it was just to get feedback because of their longevity. But I've never talked about our relationship with my brothers or my sister, anybody, except for getting marital advice about their marriage and what did they do during this situation,
Right,
but
that's true.
never letting them in like she just said, like you would tell an off friend something, and you guys have made up, you resolved the whole thing, and the person that you told is still caring, and when they see you, they're looking at you like something's wrong because they still got that message on their head of what they were told. And it's okay with you two, it's resolved, and it's still out there. So, make that bond that, that you have, your intelligence is only with you guys. That's like Secret Service stuff, it's just between you two, but you get counseling, you get advice, all of that, but the final decision is between she and I, and your spouse and you. Okay? Questions and answers now, right?
Yes, yes.